When everyone heard about my husband's affair with a nurse, they called it my greatest tragedy. But I knew something they didn't. They were wrong. It was my escape. Before I was just Samuel's wife, I had a completely different life. I was a freelance translator, and I thought it was the most wonderful job in the world. I lived inside a world of words, building bridges between different cultures. It was more than a job. It was my passion. In fact, it was how I met Samuel. I remember our first date so clearly. We would sit in a small, quiet coffee shop for hours. I would teach him beautiful words from other languages that had no single word in English. His eyes would light up with curiosity. He was an architect, a man of lines and structures, but he was fascinated by my world of feelings and ideas. I felt so seen, so understood. He once told me, "Elena, your mind is the most beautiful place I have ever visited." I held on to those words for years. But years passed. Our 2 children were born. Life became a routine of schedules and responsibilities. Slowly, our long conversations disappeared. Now, we only talk about practical things, like who will pick up the kids or if the bills are paid. My personal dictionary, the one filled with all my favorite untranslatable words, has not been opened in years. It lies in a box under our bed, covered in dust. Sometimes, I felt like a part of me was in that box, too. I tried to reconnect. Last Christmas, I found a special book of poetry I knew he would love, the old hymn. He opened my gift and smiled, but it was a polite, tired smile. "Thank you, honey," he said, and put it on a high shelf. He never opened it again. A week later, I saw him on the sofa, completely lost in a magazine about modern architecture. His eyes were bright with interest. I knew in that moment, the man who fell in love with me, the man who visited my mind, was gone. He had moved out a long time ago. The distance between us grew wider and wider. Then, 3 months ago, Samuel got very sick. He had pneumonia. For a man who liked to control everything, being sick was like being in a prison. He became difficult and angry. I tried to take care of him, but nothing was ever good enough. One morning, I brought him his medicine. He looked at the clock on the wall. "You're 2 minutes late," he said, his voice cold and hard. I said nothing. I just felt tired, a deep kind of tired that sleep could not fix. A few days later, the doctor said he needed to go to the hospital. When I heard the news, a small, selfish part of me felt a little bit of peace. I thought, maybe this is good. I hoped that when he came back, he would be different. I whispered to myself, maybe he will understand that some things cannot be planned. Maybe he will soften. It was a small, foolish hope. The next day, I went to visit him. As I walked towards his room, I heard laughter. I stopped. Through the open door, I saw him with a young nurse named Emily. He was listening to her so carefully. His head was tilted. His eyes were bright. She was beautiful and full of life, telling him about her dream to travel the world. Samuel, my husband, was listening to another woman's dreams. I couldn't remember the last time he had asked about mine. Then, he started telling her about his latest building design, and her eyes filled with admiration. She looked at him with stars in her eyes. I just stood there, holding a bag of his favorite fruits, feeling like a delivery person. I thought, what happens when I am not here? When she finally left the room, Samuel looked at me. His face was blank again. "Did you remember to pay the electricity bill?" he asked. My heart felt heavy, like a stone in my chest. I did not drive home that day. I walked. I needed to feel the ground under my feet. The evening air was cool on my face. I watched the people on the street, laughing, talking, rushing. They were all living their own stories. For just a moment, I felt like a part of the world again, not just a ghost in my own home. When Samuel came home from the hospital, he was a different man, but not in the way I had hoped. He was quiet, too quiet. He sat in the car on the way home and just looked out the window. He did not say a word. I knew something was wrong. It was a new kind of silence, and it scared me more than his anger. In the days that followed, he was always on his phone, a small, secret smile on his face. I asked him who he was texting. "Just a colleague," he would say, without looking at me. But he never smiled like that at messages from his colleagues. I knew, deep down, that his silence was filled with secrets, and I was afraid of what I might find if I looked too closely. I knew I could not ignore the secrets anymore. A few days later, Samuel told me he had an important business dinner. "It's with a new client," he said. "Don't wait up for me." He put on his most expensive suit, the one he wore when he wanted to impress someone. A cold feeling washed over me. I felt a knot in my stomach. A woman's intuition is a powerful thing. It's a quiet voice that whispers the truth, even when you don't want to hear it. I knew he was lying. My hands were shaking, but I took my car keys and followed him. He did not drive to the business district. He drove to a fancy, romantic restaurant on the other side of town. I parked my car across the street, in the shadows of a large tree. My heart was beating so fast, it felt like a drum against my ribs. I sat there and waited. A few minutes later, Emily arrived. She was not wearing her nurse's uniform. She was wearing a beautiful, sparkling evening dress. Samuel stood up to greet her. He kissed her gently on the cheek. I watched them through the large restaurant window. I felt like I was watching a movie of someone else's life. They were laughing. He looked so relaxed, so happy, so alive. He looked like the man I had married, not the stranger who lived in my house. Then, the moment came that broke everything. I saw him reach across the table. He gently brushed a piece of her hair from her face. His hand stayed there for just a second too long. Then he took out a small, velvet box. He opened it and revealed a delicate, sparkling bracelet. My breath caught in my throat. He carefully put the bracelet on her wrist. Then, he lifted her hand to his lips and kissed it. It was not a passionate kiss. It was a kiss full of tenderness, of affection, of promise. It was everything he had stopped giving me years ago. That was the final limit. In that moment, something inside me snapped. I felt the air leave my lungs. My entire world became small and focused on that one image. His lips on her hand. I felt no tears. I only felt a strange, cold, calm. I knew what I had to do. I got out of the car. I walked across the street, my steps steady and sure. I walked into the restaurant. The soft music and chatter stopped as people turned to look at me. I ignored them. I walked directly to their table. Samuel and Emily looked up. The smiles on their faces froze. Their skin went pale. I said nothing. I looked straight at Emily. For years, I had been a ghost. In that moment, I decided to finally be seen. I raised my hand. The sound of the slap was loud in the quiet room. It echoed through the entire restaurant. The sound of the slap cut through the soft music. For a moment, there was only silence. Every person in the restaurant was staring at our table. Emily held her hand to her face, her eyes wide with shock and shame. I could see a red mark already forming on her cheek. Samuel jumped to his feet. His chair scraped loudly against the polished floor. His face was dark red with anger and embarrassment. "Elena!" he finally shouted, his voice shaking. "Are you crazy?" I looked at him, and for the first time in many years, I did not feel small or afraid. I felt nothing, just a cold, clear calm. I thought, so this is the end. A small, sad smile touched my lips. "Crazy?" I asked. My voice was quiet, but it carried through the silent room. "No, Samuel, I am not crazy." I took a deep breath. For years, I tried to understand your silence. I tried to understand your distance, but I was using the wrong dictionary. I looked at the bracelet on Emily's wrist, then back at his shocked face. Tonight, I am finally translating your actions into truth, and the truth is, our marriage is over. The words hung in the air between us. I felt a strange sense of power. I had finally said it. I had finally spoken my own language. Samuel just stood there, speechless. His mouth was open, but no words came out. He looked completely lost. I turned my head and looked at the other diners. They were all watching us, their forks frozen in midair. I knew I had to finish this. "I am sorry to disturb your evening," I said, my voice clear and steady for everyone to hear. "My husband here, the talented architect, is just designing a new relationship." I let the words sink in. "Please, continue your meals." I gave Samuel one last look. I saw shock, I saw anger, and for the first time, I saw a little bit of fear in his eyes. I knew he finally understood that he had lost control. Then, I turned around. I did not run. I walked slowly and calmly towards the exit. With every step, I felt the weight of the last 15 years